All right, when you think of horned dinosaurs, you think of spikes, right? I mean, the rule was pretty simple. The bigger and pointier, the better. But what if one dinosaur decided to break all the rules? We're talking about 74 million years ago, in the heart of what's now Montana. Let's dive in, because this animal, it didn't have a spear on its nose. Nope, it had a shield.
So right away, this brings us to the central mystery of this whole story. I mean, you gotta ask, why? Why would a horned dinosaur get rid of its horn? Think about it. Evolution spends millions of years perfecting this sharp, lethal weapon, only to trade it in for, well, a blunt instrument? It seems like a huge step backward, right? But, as you'll see, nature had a very good reason.
So, yeah, a dinosaur that breaks the rules. Let's properly meet our main character. Achelousaurus horner, the dinosaur that traded its spear for a shield. And the name? It's pretty cool, actually. It comes from the Greek river god Achelousaurus, who got his horn torn off fighting Hercules. A perfect fit, don't you think? Because this dinosaur's head, man, it gives us one of the most incredible, crystal-clear snapshots of evolution ever found. Its story is locked away in rocks from the late Cretaceous, about 74 million years ago, in what we now call Montana. But you've got to picture it. This wasn't the Montana you know today. Not even close. It was part of this long, narrow island continent called Laramidia, a hot, humid world just packed with some of the most amazing dinosaurs that ever walked the earth. And lucky for us, that environment was perfect for preserving their secrets. Montana's prehistoric flipbook, uncovering the evidence in the Two Medicine Formation. So here's the thing. The secret to this whole mystery, it isn't just in the bones. It's in the ground itself. We've got to look at this specific geological layer called the Two Medicine Formation. Now, for the animals that live there, it was basically a Cretaceous death trap. But for paleontologists, it's an absolute dream come true. So what's the deal with this place? What makes it so special? Well, picture this. As the Rocky Mountains were just starting to rise up in the west, nearby volcanoes were constantly erupting, and they just blanketed the entire landscape in these thick layers of ash. This ash acted like a perfect preservative. It literally entombed everything, freezing these little moments in time. And the most important part? It buried the fossils in these perfect, distinct, datable layers, one right on top of the other. And this is where it all clicks together. This is what turns geology into a story. Because the fossils are stacked like that, paleontologists can literally read the layers of rock like pages in a prehistoric flipbook. You look at the bottom, oldest layer, boom, you find an ancestor, Styracosaurus. You move up to the middle layer, and you get its descendant, Achelousaurus. And then right there at the top, in the youngest layer, our hero appears, Achelousaurus. It's evolution caught red-handed, happening in a straight line. Anatomy of a brawler. Yeah, it wasn't built to stab, it was built to shove. So let's look at the hardware. What kind of anatomy backs up this whole story? See, Achelousaurus wasn't designed for some kind of elegant fencing match with a pointy horn. No way. This animal was a brawler, a pure tank, and its entire skull was engineered for one thing and one thing only: raw, head-on power. And yeah, it had the weight to back it up. We're talking about a 3-metric-ton animal. That's about the weight of a white rhino. It wasn't the absolute biggest dinosaur of its kind, but it was dense, it was powerful, and every single part of it was built for high-impact collisions, basically a walking battering ram. And this right here, this is the key difference. Just look at its ancestor, Styracosaurus. It had that classic, long, pointy nasal horn. You know, a spear made for stabbing. Achelousaurus, it traded that in for this thing, a thick, rough, bony platform called a nasal boss. We're talking about a total shift in combat philosophy here. It's moving from a piercing weapon to a crushing one. And the rest of the skull tells the exact same story. Over the eyes, no sharp brow horns. Instead, you've got these thick, gnarled, bony ridges, basically more shields. Now, it did keep 2 massive, super intimidating spikes curving out from its frill, probably for showing off or maybe locking heads with a rival. And get this, to handle the crazy force of ramming into stuff, its neck vertebrae were all fused together into a solid rod, a syncovertebral, built to absorb shock. The whole head was a weapon system designed not to stab an opponent, but to just completely overwhelm them. Evolution in a straight line, solving the mystery with a textbook scientific theory. Okay, so how do scientists explain this bizarre straight-line transformation from a spear to a shield? Well, this is where Achelousaurus becomes a total rock star in the world of paleontology. It's a textbook example of a very specific and pretty rare type of evolution. The concept is called anagenesis. Okay, so usually we think of evolution like a branching tree, right? One species splits off and becomes two or more new species. Anagenesis is different. It's not a tree, it's a straight line. The entire species just gradually transforms into something new over millions of years. The old form doesn't split off, it just becomes the new form. And that's why seeing it laid out so perfectly in the rock layers is such a huge deal. It's incredibly rare. And here it is. This is the money shot. This is the evidence, plain and simple. That two medicine formation shows us the entire story, like a perfect step-by-step evolutionary timeline. You start with Stegosaurus with its long, straight horn. Then that evolves into Achelousaurus, where the horn gets all funky and curves forward. Then that horn just collapses into the thick nasal boss of Achelousaurus. And it doesn't stop there. Finally, that boss expands into this giant flat plate on its descendant, Pachyrhinosaurus. It's just an undeniable, straight line of evolution preserved in solid rock. Amazing. Okay, so we've got the how, right? That beautiful fossil record laid it all out for us. But we still have to tackle the biggest question of all. Why? Why lose the horn? Why would you trade a perfectly good spear for, essentially, a bony lump? Well, science has a couple of really fascinating ideas on this. All right, we've got two main competing theories here. First up is the safety first theory. We know from fossil bone beds that these things were like the bison of the Cretaceous. They traveled in huge herds, maybe thousands of them. Now, if you're always fighting for dominance in a crowd that big, sharp, deadly horns are a huge liability. You don't want to accidentally kill your opponent because that just weakens the whole herd. A blunt boss, though, that lets you have these brutal shoving matches to see who's boss without needing a funeral afterwards. Then you've got the rhino horn theory. This one's interesting. What if that bony boss was just the base? Some scientists think a giant horn of keratin, like a rhino's horn, sat right on top. And since keratin doesn't fossilize, all we'd be seeing is the rough, bony platform it grew from. A creator's design lesson, why Achelousaurus is a symbol of adaptation. You know, all of this makes Achelousaurus so much more than just a cool fossil. For anyone out there who creates stuff, whether you're a writer, an animator, a game designer, whatever, this animal is basically a masterclass in adaptation. It's a really deep lesson in how you build something that's truly effective. And this quote just nails it. It represents the moment nature decided that a shield was better than a sword. Think about that. Achelousaurus is like that key moment in a story where the whole strategy flips. It's where pure brute force evolves into rugged resilience. It's that hard-won lesson that sometimes a defensive shield, a tool built to last, is way more powerful than an offensive sword. And really, that's the big takeaway from this incredible animal. We tend to think of evolution as just adding stuff, adding more spikes, more teeth, making things more complex. But Achelousaurus teaches us a different lesson. Sometimes real progress comes from taking something away, from simplifying, from refining what you already have into something much, much tougher. You could call it evolution by subtraction. So I'll leave you with this to think about. Just look around at the world today, at the tech you use, the tools you rely on. What's a modern design that's amazing not because it's packed with a million features, but because it's just simple, durable, and tough? The dinosaur that lost its horn ended up finding its true power, and that's a design lesson that's just as powerful today as it was 74 million years ago.